Trapped with the one man I swore I'd never want. The storm arrived faster than it was supposed to. That was the first thing Lena realized as the tires of the SUV skidded slightly on the narrow mountain road, the world beyond the windshield dissolving into white. Snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, blurring the pines into shadows and swallowing the sky whole. The road sign they passed half buried, crooked might as well have been a warning instead of a marker. Private property, miles 1218. Lena folded her arms tighter across her chest, more out of instinct than cold. The heater was on full blast, but the air felt thinner the higher they climbed. This wasn't in the forecast, she said, her voice tight. The man in the driver's seat didn't look at her. It shifted. That was all he said. 3 syllables. Calm. Control. Infuriating. Lena turned her head toward the window, jaw clenched. She'd forgotten how much she hated that about him, how nothing ever seemed to rattle him. Not storms. Not silence. Not her. Especially not her. The cabin was supposed to be a formality. A quick inspection. One night. Maybe 2. Remote, yes, but manageable. She'd agreed to it because she hadn't realized he would be the one driving her up the mountain. If she had, she would have found an excuse. Any excuse. Ethan Hale guided the SUV through another bend, hand steady on the wheel. The dashboard lights cast faint shadows across his face, sharp cheekbones, stubble along his jaw, eyes fixed forward. He looked exactly as he always did, like a man built for pressure, like someone who belonged in places where other people unraveled. Lena hated that her body remembered him before her mind could stop it. Relax, he said, finally glancing her way. We're almost there. She let out a humorless laugh. That's supposed to make me feel better. It should. I don't trust your definition of should. That earned her a brief look, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes before it vanished. He didn't respond. He never rose to bait anymore, not like he used to. And that somehow made it worse. The cabin emerged from the snowfall like a dark secret, wooden, solid, isolated. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney, which surprised her. You were here already? She asked. Caretaker prepped it this morning, Ethan said, pulling the SUV into the narrow driveway. Heat's on. Generators fueled. Of course it was. He always planned 3 steps ahead. They stepped out into the snow, boots crunching against ice. The cold hit her instantly, sharp and invasive, slipping under her coat and down her spine. Wind whipped her hair loose from its tie, stinging her cheeks. Ethan was already moving, grabbing her bag from the back without asking. I can carry my own. I know, he said evenly. I'm still taking it. She bristled, but didn't argue. The snow was thick now, visibility shrinking by the minute. The idea of standing out here longer just to prove a point felt stupid. Inside, the cabin was warm, dimly lit by soft amber lamps, rustic but modern stone fireplace, wide windows now nearly opaque with snow, a heavy wooden table at the center of the room, one couch, one armchair, a narrow hallway leading deeper inside. Lena stopped just past the threshold. It was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, the kind that pressed against the ears, the kind that made every breath sound too loud. Ethan shut the door behind them, locking it out of habit. The sound echoed. Her stomach tightened. This place is smaller than I expected, she said. It's a cabin. Yes, well, I was expecting more separation. She gestured vaguely. Rooms. Space. There's a bedroom and a loft. Her gaze snapped to him. A loft. He nodded once. Open. Of course it was. She dropped her bag near the table and shrugged out of her coat, hanging it on a hook by the door. Her movements were brisk, controlled. She refused to let him see the flicker of unease crawling under her skin. Fine, she said. One night. The storm passes. We leave. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He crossed to the window, peering out at the thickening white beyond the glass. Snow slammed sideways now, violent and unrelenting. Lena, he said quietly, we're not leaving tomorrow. She stiffened. What do you mean? The pass will be closed. Already is, most likely. Her heart skipped. You don't know that. I do. She stepped closer to the window, squinting through the blur. The world outside looked erased. No road. No markers. Just the Just snow and sky bleeding together. How long? She asked. Ethan turned to face her. Could be 2 days. Could be more. The words landed like a weight. No, she said immediately. That's not no. There has to be another way down. There isn't. You're just saying that. I'm not. Her laugh came sharp, brittle. You always do this. Speak like something's already decided. Like the rest of us don't get a vote. His jaw tightened. This isn't about control. Isn't it? She met his gaze, heat flaring in her chest. Because it feels a lot like you cornering me in the middle of nowhere. For a moment, something dangerous flickered across his face. Not anger. Something deeper. Regret, maybe, or restraint. If I wanted to corner you, he said slowly, I wouldn't need a storm. The silence that followed was thick. Lena swallowed, suddenly very aware of the space between them, the warmth of the cabin, the way the air seemed to hum with things unsaid. She looked away first. Fine, she said. Temporary truce. We're adults. We can coexist. Yes, Ethan said. We can. But his tone suggested he didn't believe it. An hour later, the power went out. The lights flickered once, twice, then darkness swallowed the cabin whole. Are you kidding me? Lena snapped, hands flying out instinctively. The generator kicked in a moment later, the lights returning in a softer glow. The fireplace crackled to life automatically, flames dancing behind the glass. Ethan exhaled slowly. Backup's working. That was not reassuring. It should be. She shot him a look. Stop saying that. A ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth before he could stop it. It vanished just as quickly. They ate dinner and strained quite something simple he'd heated up without comment. She noticed, reluctantly, that he remembered her preferences. No mushrooms. Extra spice. She hated that he still knew. Later, as the storm howled louder, she found herself pacing near the fireplace, restless energy buzzing under her skin. Do you ever talk? She asked suddenly. Yes. To people you're not guarding. His gaze lifted to her. Sometimes. She scoffed. You could have fooled me. He leaned back in the armchair, long legs stretched out, posture deceptively relaxed. You're nervous. I'm not. You are. Don't analyze me. I'm not analyzing. I'm observing. She turned to face him fully now. You always did that. Stood there, watching, like you were waiting for me to crack. That's not fair. Isn't it? Her voice wavered despite herself. You show up everywhere I don't want you, Ethan. You take up space. You make decisions for other people. And now I'm trapped in a cabin with you while the world disappears outside. His expression softened. I didn't plan this. I know, she said quietly. That's the problem. The fire popped loudly, sparks jumping. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the distance between them felt suddenly very small. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, gaze fixed on the flames. She'd sworn she would never want this man, never rely on him, never feel that pull again. It started with a sound. Not the wind that had been screaming for hours now, battering the cabin like it wanted inside. This was different. A dull, deliberate thud. Lena froze mid-step near the fireplace. Did you hear that? She asked. Ethan was already on his feet. Yes. Another sound followed, metal scraping faintly against wood. Slow, intentional. Lena's pulse spiked. That's not the storm. No, Ethan said quietly. It isn't. He crossed the room in long strides, reaching the window first. He wiped a circle in the fogged glass with his sleeve and leaned in, eyes narrowing. Outside, the snow was thick enough to swallow shapes whole. The beam from the exterior floodlight cut through the white, but only barely. I can't see anything, Lena said, moving closer despite herself. Ethan lifted a hand without looking at her. Don't come closer. She stopped instantly, irritation flaring even as fear curled in her stomach. You don't get to. Another thud, louder this time, from the side of the cabin. Lena flinched. That came from the back, she whispered. Ethan didn't respond. His jaw tightened as he scanned the perimeter again. gaze sharp, calculating. He moved toward the wall where the security panel was mounted, fingers flying over the keypad. No alerts, he muttered. No motion triggers. That doesn't make sense, Lena said. You said this place was secured. It is. Then what the hell is out there? Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed to the door and tested the lock once, twice. Solid. Then the deadbolt. Ethan, she said, voice lower now. Tell me. He finally turned to her. There are old access trails around this property, he said carefully, mostly used by hikers, some by locals who know the area. Her stomach dropped. You're saying someone could be out there? I'm saying it's possible. The wind held again, rattling the windows violently, as if punctuating his words. Lena folded her arms tightly around herself. In this storm? Yes. Why? His gaze lingered on her face for half a second too long. Sometimes, he said slowly, people don't need a good reason. Another sound closer now. This time, unmistakably human. A footstep crunching against packed snow. Lena's breath caught. That was. I know, Ethan said. He moved fast, then retrieving a flashlight from the drawer near the door, checking the weight of something in his hand she hadn't noticed before. Is that a gun? She asked sharply. No, he said, but it'll do. Her pulse thundered. You're not going outside. I am. No, she said, stepping into his path. You are absolutely not leaving me alone in here. His gaze dropped to her, steady but intense. You won't be alone. The cabin's secure. That's not the point, she snapped. You don't get to play hero and disappear into a blizzard. This isn't about heroics, he said quietly. It's about making sure whoever's out there doesn't try the door next. Silence stretched between them thick, charged, frightening. Another knock clear this time. 3 sharp raps against the side wall. Lena's heart slammed so hard it hurt. Oh my God, she whispered. They're testing it. Ethan's expression hardened instantly. Go to the bedroom. Lock the door. No. Lena. I said no. She lifted her chin, fear blazing behind her eyes. If someone's out there, I'm not hiding while you. His voice cut through hers, low and unyielding. Listen to me. If anything happens, you do exactly what I say. Do you understand? The intensity of his stare stole the breath from her lungs. Yes, she said finally. He hesitated just for a fraction of a second, then reached out, gripping her wrist. Not rough. Firm. Grounding. Stay here, he said. I'll be right outside. Before she could argue again, he pulled the door open. The wind exploded inward, icy and violent. Snow blasted across the floor as Ethan stepped into the storm, slamming the door shut behind him. Lena stood frozen, staring at the wood separating them. Idiot, she whispered. Absolute idiot. She pressed her ear to the door, heart racing. Muffled voices carried through the wind, indistinct, raised. Then a shout. Then silence. Minutes stretched like hours. Just as panic clawed fully into her chest, the door burst open again. Ethan stumbled inside, snow-covered, breathing hard. Ethan, she rushed forward instinctively, catching his arm. He winced. Her gaze dropped to the dark stain spreading along his sleeve. Blood. Her voice shook. You're hurt. It's nothing, he said automatically. She rounded on him, furious and terrified all at once. You went out there alone. You didn't tell me what happened. And now you're bleeding in my cabin like that's acceptable? Lena. Sit down, she snapped. He blinked, surprise. Then slowly he did. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the threat hadn't passed. The storm held like it had a voice of its own, scraping against the cabin walls and rattling the windows. Inside, the fire cracked and popped, throwing amber light across Ethan's snow-matted jacket and the worried crease in Lena's forehead. She knelt beside him, trying to stem the slow trickle of blood from his forearm, but every movement felt like a negotiation with herself, hands trembling, heart hammering, desire and fear tangled. Tell me, she said, finally, voice taut with frustration and worry. Who was out there? Was it a person? A criminal? Some lunatic who wants to shove me off the mountain? Ethan leaned back slightly, letting her work carefully. His jaw was tight, fingers flexing against her subtly. He didn't answer right away. That was his way. Measuring words, measuring impact. Finally, it was the caretaker's son. She froze mid-motion. The caretaker's son? You mean? Damien, he said, grim. He followed the storm. Thought he could check on the property. He's reckless, overconfident, and underestimates both the weather and me. Lena blinked. He just wanted to make sure the cabin was okay. And nearly killed you in the process? Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. Exactly. She wanted to roll her eyes at the absurdity. She wanted to be annoyed. Instead, she felt her chest tighten, awareness of him sharper than ever. He hadn't hesitated. He'd gone out there, into a blizzard, to intercept a reckless boy who'd probably been halfway up the cliff before realizing he shouldn't have. God, Ethan, she snapped, trying to shake off the swell of fear mixed with something else entirely. You could have. Been fine, he interrupted. I'm fine. You're bleeding. He gave her a small, sharp look. It's nothing. She shook her head. Nothing? Do you even know what it feels like to scare the hell out of someone? You. Her words faltered as she noticed his gaze on her hands. The way they lingered on him as she pressed the bandage over the shallow cut, careful, delicate, brushing his sleeve, his skin, as if she could will him to stop being hurt. Here, he said quietly. You're shaking. I'm not, she started, then faltered again. I can't believe you went out there alone. Ethan's eyes softened in a way that made her stomach drop. I can't protect anyone by hiding behind them, he said. Especially not you. Something inside her clenched. She hated how he phrased it like that. Like it wasn't terrifyingly intimate. Like the storm outside had nothing on the tension between them now. She pressed the bandage more firmly. Next time, maybe wait until I'm fully terrified before you step into the blizzard, okay? He tilted his head, the corner of his mouth lifting just slightly. Next time? Yes, next time, she said, ignoring the rush of heat that flared in her chest. The wind slammed against the windows again, rattling the cabin. Damien's foolish footsteps and reckless bravery had been the immediate danger. But now, inside the cabin, the real peril was different. The charged space between them, the unspoken tension that had grown sharper than the snowstorm outside. Ethan shifted closer, subtly, as she moved to set the first aid kit back on the counter. Lena caught herself holding her breath. His warmth filled the space between them, impossible to ignore. She hated how it felt comforting, hated how her pulse reacted when his shoulder brushed hers even accidentally. I shouldn't be scared, she muttered, mostly to herself. You're allowed to be, he said quietly, and she realized he was right there, close enough she could see the faint scar near his temple she hadn't noticed before, just above the line of stubble. Small, mundane, humanizing, and yet it made her stomach clench. She looked away, busying herself with the fire, forcing the space between them back into normalcy. Next time, you let me grab a gun or... He chuckled low, warm, restrained. Next time, you let me handle it. She froze. Next time? His gaze didn't waver. Next time, there will be a next time. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist she didn't need him, but the warmth of his body, the sharpness of his presence, the way his words carried both warning and something else, something she wasn't ready to name, kept her silent. Another impact hit the door hard enough that dust shook loose from the ceiling beams. Lena's body reacted before her mind did. She pressed instinctively into Ethan's chest, fingers clutching his jacket. He stiffened for half a second. Then his arm locked around her, anchoring her there. The silence stretched. Too loud. Too heavy. A shape moved past the window. A shadow. Slow, deliberate. They stayed like that longer than either of them meant to. Crouched behind the dresser, her knees drawn tight to her chest. Ethan's body curved around hers like a shield he hadn't consciously chosen but hadn't questioned either. The storm screamed outside, but inside the cabin there was only the sound of breath and the faint crackle of the dying fire. Lena was the first to realize she was shaking. Not from the cold, from the way her body still remembered his hand over her mouth, the firmness of it, the certainty, the way he hadn't hesitated for even a fraction of a second. She swallowed, throat tight. Ethan, she whispered. He stilled instantly. Yes, just that. No softness, no reassurance. But he was listening, every inch of him alert, tuned to her. I can't, her voice wavered, anger and fear tangling together. I can't stay back here. I know, he said. She lifted her head slightly, surprised. You do? Yes. His breath brushed her hair as he leaned closer. But we wait 30 seconds. If they are still gone, we move. She nodded, pressing her lips together to keep them from trembling. 30 seconds stretched into something unbearable. Every creak of the cabin made her flinch. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps returning. Her hand curled into the fabric of Ethan's jacket without permission. He noticed. Didn't comment. Didn't pull away. At the count of 30, he shifted carefully, easing out from behind the dresser. He rose in a smooth, silent motion, then turned back to her. Stay close, he murmured. She scoffed weakly. Wasn't planning on wandering off. That earned her the faintest exhale of breath against her temple. Not quite a laugh, but something close. They moved through the hallway together, his hand firm at her lower back, now guiding, grounding. Every step felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with survival. The main room was a mess. The back door hung slightly ajar, snow drifting in through the crack. One of the chairs had been knocked over. A muddy footprint marked the floor near the window. Lena stared at it. They were really here, she whispered. Yes. Her chest tightened. Not Damien. No, Ethan said flatly. She looked up at him. His expression had changed, gone was the measured calm. What remained was something darker, sharper. His jaw was clenched hard enough she could see the muscle flex. Then who? She asked. Someone who knew this place would be isolated tonight, he said. Someone who expected to find it empty. Her stomach dropped. Or expected to find me. Ethan didn't deny it. That silence said everything. She dragged a hand through her hair, panic threatening to spill over. You said this was safe. It was, he said, until it wasn't. The honesty in that unvarnished, unapologetic hit her harder than reassurance would have. The wind surged again, forcing the door wider with a shriek of protesting hinges. Ethan moved without thinking. He stepped in front of her. The motion was instinctive, protective, so automatic it felt dangerous. Don't, she snapped, grabbing his sleeve. Don't do that. Do what? Put yourself between me and everything, she said, voice tight. I didn't ask for that. He turned slowly to face her. You didn't have to. The words landed heavier than she expected. They stood there, inches apart, the cold seeping in around them, the storm howling like it had opinions about the standoff. I hate this, she said quietly. I know. I hate that you're right, she added, and I hate that you were the one here. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or relief, or something more complicated than either. Do you want me to leave? He asked. She stared at him. At the cut on his arm. At the tension in his shoulders. At the way his eyes never stopped tracking the room even while focused on her. No, she said finally. I want you to stop acting like you're expendable. His breath caught. That was the moment that changed things. Not the threat. Not the fear. Not even the breach. That sentence. I'm not, he said quietly. I just know where I stand. And where's that? She demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached past her and shut the back door fully, locking it again. He reinforced it with a heavy table, muscles straining as he dragged it across the floor. When he turned back to her, his control was thinner now, not gun but frayed. We're not sleeping tonight, he said. We take shifts. You're injured. I'm functional. She crossed her arms. You're impossible. His gaze dropped to her mouth for half a second too long before he looked away. So are you. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was loaded. They sat near the fire, backs against opposite ends of the couch, tension stretched tight between them like a wire. Every time the wind howled, every time the cabin creaked, their bodies reacted in unison. Hours passed like that. Then, another sound. Not outside. From the hallway. Lena bolted upright. Did you hear that? Yes. He was on his feet instantly, moving toward the darkness. She followed him this time. He didn't stop her. They reached the doorway together. Nothing. Just shadows. And then a floorboard shifted beneath her foot. She gasped, losing her balance. Ethan caught her. Hard. Her body slammed into his chest, his arms locking around her fully this time. No restraint, no distance. She felt his breath stutter as he steadied them both. They stayed like that. Too close. Too aware. Her hands were fisted in his shirt. His grip was solid at her waist, fingers digging in like he needed proof she was still there. Ethan, she whispered. He didn't let go. I know, he said hoarsely. I know. The realization didn't come with a sound. That was the problem. Ethan stood perfectly still in the hallway, every muscle locked, every instinct screaming. Something was wrong. Too quiet. The storm was still raging outside, but inside the cabin the air felt held, as if the house itself was waiting. Lena shifted beside him. Ethan. He lifted a hand slowly. Not to silence her. To stop her from moving. Her breath caught. He leaned in, mouth close to her ear, voice barely audible. There should be more noise. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, he whispered, whoever came and didn't leave the way they arrived. Her blood went cold. Before she could respond, something clicked softly behind them. Metal. Very close. Ethan reacted instantly. He spun, shoving Lena behind him just as a shape lunged out of the darkness near the kitchen doorway. There was no warning, no words. Just impact. The intruder crashed into Ethan, sending both of them into the wall. Lena screamed as the firelight flared, revealing a man she didn't recognize, tall, soaked, eyes wild, desperation etched into every line of his face. He wasn't armed. That made him more dangerous. Get out of my way, the man shouted, shoving at Ethan again. I just need shelter. You broke in, Ethan growled, grappling him, forcing him back. You don't get to demand anything. The man thrashed, elbowing wildly. You think I had a choice? I would have frozen out there. Lena's heart pounded so hard she thought she might pass out. Ethan, she cried. I've got him. Ethan snapped, and then he didn't. The intruder slammed into the table, knocking it sideways. A knife clattered to the floor. Lena's stomach dropped. The man froze too. All three of them stared at it. Then everything happened at once. The intruder dove. Ethan lunged. They collided hard, crashing into the floor. Ethan's injured arm gave out with a sharp hiss of pain, and the man wrenched free just long enough to grab the knife. Lena moved without thinking. She picked up the fireplace poker and swung. It connected with the man's shoulder. He howled, dropping the knife as he stumbled back. Ethan surged forward, fury breaking through restraint, and slammed the man against the wall. His forearm pressed into the intruder's throat. You're done, Ethan said, voice low and lethal. The man sagged, breath ragged, panic finally overtaking desperation. I didn't want to hurt anyone, he gasped. I couldn't die out there. Ethan hesitated. Just long enough. Lena saw it, the split second where his humanity fought his instincts. The man took advantage. He shoved Ethan away and bolted for the door. Ethan chased him into the storm without hesitation. Ethan, no. Lena screamed. The door slammed open, snow and wind exploding inside again. She ran to the threshold just in time to see Ethan tackle the man outside, both of them disappearing into the white. Seconds pass. Too many. Then Ethan staggered back inside alone, breath heaving, snow caked in his hair, blood darkening his sleeve further. He's gone, he said grimly. Ran downhill. He won't make it far. Lena stared at him, chest heaving, adrenaline still ripping through her veins. You could have been killed, she said, voice breaking. So could you, he shot back. Silence crashed between them, heavy, shaking, raw. Then it hit her. She started trembling violently. Ethan noticed instantly. He crossed the room in 2 strides and caught her as her knees buckled, pulling her against him, arms wrapping fully around her this time. She clutched his jacket, face pressed into his chest, breath coming in ragged bursts. I thought, she whispered. I thought he was going to. I know, he said, voice rough, tightening his hold. I know. He didn't let go. Didn't step back. Didn't pretend this was professional or temporary. They stood there in the wrecked cabin, storm roaring outside, danger still close enough to taste. And now there was no denying it. The threat had been real. The fear had been real. The adrenaline hadn't fully drained yet. The cabin was still wrecked, chair overturned, snow melting into dark patches on the floor, the fire burning too low. Ethan stood near the door, shoulders tense, eyes scanning like the threat might materialize again out of thin air. Lena watched him for a long moment. The way he stood there. Like a guard. Like a savior. Something in her snapped. Don't, she said suddenly. He turned, frowning slightly. Don't what? Don't stand like that, she said, voice sharp. Like you just saved me. His brow furrowed. Lena. No, she cut in, stepping forward. Her hands were shaking now, but she didn't care. You don't get to act like the hero. The words landed hard. Ethan stiffened. I wasn't. You were, she shot back. You always do. You decide what's dangerous. You decide what I need. You decide when I'm allowed to be scared and when I'm supposed to be grateful. That's not fair, he said, jaw tightening. She laughed once, bitter. Fair? You shoved me behind you without asking. You covered my mouth. You ran out into a storm like your life is expendable and mine isn't. He took a step toward her. I was keeping you alive. And that's the problem, she said, meeting his gaze head on. You think that gives you the right to rewrite this story. Silence stretched between them, thick and raw. You don't know me, she continued, voice lower now, more dangerous. You don't know what it costs me to need someone, and you don't get to turn tonight into some proof that you're what? Better than me? Stronger? That's not what this is, he said quietly. Then what is it? She demanded. Because from where I'm standing, this looks like control wrapped up as concern. That one hit. She saw it in his eyes, the flash of something wounded, something restrained. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue. He just said, I would have done the same for anyone. Her chest tightened. Liar, she said softly. And that's worse. She turned away before he could answer, before he could explain, before he could soften it again. Behind her, Ethan stayed where he was. Didn't follow. Didn't touch her. Didn't defend himself. And that hurt more than if he had. Because now the line was clear again. They weren't allies. They weren't comfort. They weren't anything tender. Ethan didn't argue. That was what unsettled Lena most. He didn't defend himself, didn't explain, didn't soften the edges of what she'd just said. He simply nodded once, the motion small, controlled like something had been locked into place. Understood, he said. The word was flat, professional, final. He turned away from her and crossed the room, movements precise, efficient. He righted the overturned chair, checked the lock again, secured the windows. Every action was purposeful and pointedly impersonal. Lena stood where she was, arms folded tightly around herself. She waited for him to say something else. He didn't. When he spoke again, it was without looking at her. We'll stay on opposite sides of the cabin. I'll take the first watch. Her jaw tightened. You don't have to. I do, he cut in, still calm, still distant. It's my responsibility. There it was. Not you. Not us. Just responsibility. He moved to the far chair near the door and sat, posture straight, eyes forward. He might as well have been made of stone. Minutes passed. The silence was different now. Before, it had been charged, pressed close, a living thing between them. Now it was empty. Cold. Lena shifted uncomfortably, the firelight flickering across the space between them. She hated that she missed the weight of his attention already, hated that his absence felt louder than his presence ever had. You're really just going to what? She asked, breaking the quiet. Pretend I'm not here. He glanced at her briefly. His eyes were unreadable. You asked me not to act like a hero. I'm respecting that. Her chest tightened. That's not what I meant. I don't need clarification, he said evenly. I need boundaries. The word stung. Boundaries meant distance. Distance meant safety. And safety, apparently, meant her alone. She looked away, jaw clenched. He remained exactly where he was for the rest of the night. When the wind howled, he didn't move closer. When the cabin creaked, he didn't react outwardly. When she shivered, he didn't offer a blanket. He watched. He guarded. He stayed detached. And somehow, that restraint hurt worse than his protectiveness ever had. At one point, exhaustion pulled at her too hard to resist. She curled up on the couch, staring into the dying fire, pretending she couldn't feel his presence across the room like a missing limb. Sleep came in fragments. When she woke briefly in the early hours, the cabin was still dim, the storm quieter now. Ethan was still awake, still watching the door, still not looking at her. Something heavy settled in her chest. She had wanted him to stop acting like the hero. She hadn't expected him to stop acting like he cared. Lena woke up knowing something was wrong. Not fear, not dread. Pain. It bloomed low and sharp along her right ankle the moment she shifted, a white-hot jolt that stole the breath from her lungs. She bit down on a gasp, curling her fingers into the blanket instead. Stupid. 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 She twisted it the night before when she'd slipped near the hallway, adrenaline masking what her body was now very determined to remind her of. She sat up slowly. The cabin was quiet. Pale morning light filtered through the snow-heavy windows. The storm had softened into a relentless hush, thickened and moving. And across the room, Ethan was already awake. Seated near the table, jacket on, boots laced, a mug of something steaming in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Or if he had, it had been light, deliberate, control. He didn't look at her. Morning, she said, testing her voice. Morning, he replied, just as flat. She swung her legs off the couch. The moment her foot touched the floor, pain shot up her leg like fire. She hissed sharply and lurched, grabbing the arm of the couch to steady herself. Ethan's chair scraped back. He crossed the room in 3 steps, stopped just short of touching her. You're injured, he said. I'm fine, she snapped automatically. He looked at her ankle. You're not. I said I'm. She tried to put weight on it again. Her knee buckled. Ethan caught her elbow. That was it. No hesitation. No gentleness. Just a firm grip that kept her upright and nothing more. She sucked in a breath, furious, at the pain, at herself, at the fact that he was right. Let go, she said. He didn't argue. He guided her back onto the couch, released her immediately, and crouched in front of her like she was a problem to be assessed, not a person to be comforted. When did it happen? He asked. Last night, she muttered. Why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't want your help. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then this is inconvenient, he said calmly, because you need it. She glared at him. You don't have to sound so thrilled. I'm not, he replied. Lift your foot. She hesitated. Lena, he said, tone clipped. Either you cooperate, or you make this worse. Your choice. The lack of warmth stung. But worse was the truth of it. She lifted her foot. He removed her sock with careful efficiency, fingers brisk, impersonal. Her ankle was already swollen, an ugly bloom of red and purple spreading beneath the skin. Sprain, he said, possibly worse. She swallowed. I can still walk. You can't, he said simply. He stood and retrieved the first aid kit without another word. When he returned, he knelt again, wrapping the ankle tightly, expertly. His hands were steady, precise, like he was dealing with equipment, not her. The silence pressed down on her. You're being cruel, she said suddenly. His hands paused for half a second, then continued. I'm being professional, he corrected. You asked for distance. That's not what I asked for. That's what you got, he said, not unkindly, just final. She laughed softly, humorless. Congratulations. You made your point. He finished taping and stood. You shouldn't put weight on it today. And if I have to? Then you'll lean on furniture. Or walls. Or nothing, he said. But not me. That one landed. Her throat tightened. You really mean that? Yes. She looked away before he could see the flash of something ugly in her eyes. Later, she tried anyway. She waited until he was outside checking the perimeter before attempting to get to the kitchen on her own. She made it halfway before her ankle gave out again. This time, she didn't cry out. She just sank to the floor, breath coming shallow, anger burning hot behind her eyes. The door opened. Ethan took one look at her on the floor and closed it again behind him. He didn't rush. Didn't scold. He approached, crouched, and assessed the situation like a problem already expected. You fell, he said. Yes. You shouldn't have tried to walk. Yes. Silence. Then put your arm around my shoulder. Her head snapped up. I thought you said. I did, he said evenly. This isn't support. It's relocation. She almost laughed. Almost. She did as he said. He lifted her easily, strength-controlled, distant. No lingering touch. No unnecessary closeness. He set her back on the couch and stepped away immediately. You don't have to punish me, she said quietly. His expression hardened just a fraction. I'm not. Then what is this? This is me respecting your words, he said, and doing my job. She stared at him. That's the problem, she whispered. I don't want to be a job. Something flickered in his eyes. On just as fast. I'll make food, he said. You stay put. And he did. He cooked, cleaned, checked the doors, managed the radio, all without once asking how she felt, all without once softening. And somehow, that restraint hurt more than any argument they'd had. Because the cabin was still isolated. The danger was still real. And the man she was trapped with was choosing distance, not because he didn't care, but because he cared enough to step back. And she didn't know which was worse. The radio crackled just after noon. Not clearly, not reassuringly, just enough to matter. Ethan was kneeling by the table, adjusting the antenna for the third time when the burst of static sharpened into a voice broken, distorted, but unmistakably human. Anyone repeat unable to reach Ridge Station. Lena lifted her head from the couch. Did you hear that? Yes. Ethan straightened slowly, tension threading through his posture. He adjusted the dial again, jaw tight. The voice came back, clearer this time. Storm window closing by nightfall. If you're mobile, move now. Silence followed. Lena's heart started racing. What does that mean? It means, Ethan said carefully, rescue teams are repositioning. They won't come up the mountain again until the weather fully clears. When is that? Could be days. Her stomach dropped. And the Ridge Station? 2 miles, he said. Higher elevation. Better signal. She stared at him. You want us to go out there? I want to consider it. With my ankle? She scoffed. You just told me I can't walk. I told you you shouldn't, he corrected. There's a difference. She pushed herself upright, ignoring the spike of pain. You're not carrying me. I didn't say I would. Yes, you did, she snapped. You're thinking it right now. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said, we have a narrow window. The weather will hold for maybe 3 hours. If we don't try, we're stuck here with limited supplies and a threat that may or may not come back. And if we do try, then we risk the cold, the terrain, your injury. And you, she said sharply, you're bleeding through your sleeve. His gaze flicked to his arm, dismissive. I'll manage. She exhaled, frustrated. You always say that. And I always do. That's not the point. He looked at her, then really looked. Something unyielding settled into his expression. This isn't about pride, he said. This is about odds. And right now, moving gives us better ones. Us, she repeated quietly. He nodded once. S. Silence stretched between them. Then Lena said, I'll go. Ethan stiffened. I didn't ask. I know, she said, but I'm not staying here alone while you play martyr on a mountain. His jaw clenched. You're injured. I'm capable. That's not the same thing. She swung her legs over the side of the couch and stood carefully, bracing herself. Pain flared, but she stayed upright. I won't slow you down, she said, and I won't be carried. If I can't make it, we turn back. That's the deal. He studied her for a long moment. This wasn't stubbornness. This was resolve. Fine, he said finally, but we do this my way. She arched a brow. Meaning? I set the pace. I decide when we stop, and if it gets worse. I know, she cut in. You'll make the call. Something about the way she said it flat, resigned made his chest tighten. They geared up in silence. Layers, gloves, scarves. Ethan tightened the brace on her ankle himself, hands firm, efficient, distant. When he finished, he stood and stepped back immediately. No lingering. No eye contact. Outside, the world was blinding white. The snow had softened, but the wind still cut sharp, biting through exposed skin. The path toward the ridge was faint but visible, marked by uneven terrain and half-buried posts. Ethan led. Lena followed. At first, it was manageable. Painful, but manageable. She focused on each step, on not slipping, on not giving him a reason to stop. Her breath fogged the air, chest tight with effort. After 20 minutes, the ache in her ankle deepened into something more serious. He pulsed under the cold. Her balance wavered. Ethan noticed immediately. Stop, he said. I'm fine. You're compensating, he replied. You'll fall. I said. He turned sharply, eyes flashing. This isn't a debate. She hated that part of herself that wanted to argue just to prove she could. She hated even more that he was right. They pressed on. The slope steepened. Snow drifted higher. The wind picked up again, howling like a warning. Then Lena slipped. It was small, barely noticeable. But Ethan caught her instantly. His hands locked around her arms, pulling her against him before she could hit the ground. Her breath punched out of her chest as she collided with him. For a split second, everything still. His grip was solid, unyielding. Close. Too close. You okay? He asked, voice tight. She nodded, pulse roaring in her ears. Yes. He didn't let go right away. Then he did abruptly, stepping back like the contact burned. We're slowing down, he said. If you can't. I can, she insisted. Just don't grab me like that. His jaw flexed. Then don't fall. They continued. The ridge came into view just as the sky darkened again, clouds rolling in fast and heavy. They were running out of time. When they finally reached the station, a small, wind-battered structure barely standing, Lena sagged with relief. Ethan pushed the door open. Inside was cold, bare, but functional. He moved to the radio immediately, adjusting dials, testing signal. Lena lowered herself onto a bench, ankle screaming now, exhaustion crashing over her. Ethan, she said quietly. Yes. If we make contact. He paused. If we get out of this, she corrected. This doesn't fix everything. You know that, right? He didn't look at her. I know, he said. The radio crackled. A voice broke through clear this time. Lena's breath caught. And outside, the wind howled louder, as if the mountain itself was reminding them. Getting help was only half the battle. The radio crackled again, sharper now, the signal finally locking in. Ridge Station, identify. Ethan leaned closer, voice steady. This is Ethan Cross. 2 occupants. 1 injured. We're requesting extraction. A pause. Lena counted her breaths. In, out. Don't shake. Don't lean. Don't let him see. Copy, the voice returned. Weather window is narrowing. Extraction possible but limited. You'll need to stay put. How long? Ethan asked. Unknown. Could be hours. Could be overnight. Lena closed her eyes. Of course. Ethan acknowledged the transmission and shut the radio down. The sudden quiet pressed in, heavy and final. We wait, he said. She nodded once. Okay. She meant it. Truly, she could wait. She just needed a minute. The adrenaline that had carried her up the ridge was draining fast, leaving behind pain that felt louder in the silence. Her ankle throbbed violently now, heat and pressure pulsing with every heartbeat. Still, she didn't move, didn't complain, didn't ask for help. Ethan noticed. He always did. You should lie down, he said. I'm fine. He turned, studying her, the way her hands clenched at her sides, the tightness in her jaw, the faint sheen of sweat on her temple despite the cold. You don't have to prove anything, he said quietly. Her head snapped up. I'm not. You are, he replied, and you don't need to. She laughed once, breathless. You don't get to decide that. Something darkened in his expression. Sit, he said, tone firm. That's not a request. She hated how her body betrayed her right then. Her vision blurred. Just for a second. She pushed off the bench to stand and the world tilted violently. Her ankle gave out completely. She didn't even feel herself falling. Ethan caught her. This time, there was no hesitation, no restraint. He grabbed her fully, arms locking around her as she sagged against him, weight dead, breath coming in shallow gasps. Lena, he said sharply. Hey, stay with me. She tried to laugh. It came out wrong. I told you I could. Her legs buckled again. That was it. Ethan scooped her up without another word and carried her to the far wall, lowering her carefully onto a narrow cot. His movements were brusque but controlled, jaw tight with something dangerously close to anger. Not at her. At himself. You pushed too far, he said, kneeling to untie her boot. She stared at the ceiling, chest rising too fast. You didn't stop me. His hands stilled. You didn't let me, he said. That landed. He removed the boot gently this time, fingers slower, more careful. When he peeled back the brace, the swelling was worse than before, angry, pronounced. She swallowed hard. Is it bad? Yes, he said. She winced. Don't sugarcoat it. I'm not, he replied. You're in shock. You shouldn't have walked that far. Silence stretched between them. Then she whispered, I didn't want to need you. The words were barely sound. Ethan froze. I know, he said after a moment. His voice was different now. Lower, strained. I didn't want to give you the satisfaction, she continued, eyes burning, of being right. He exhaled slowly. This isn't about satisfaction. It feels like it is, she said. Every time you step in, it feels like I disappear. That did it. He looked up at her, eyes sharp, raw. You don't disappear, he said. You force me to see you. Her throat tightened. That's the problem, she whispered. The room felt suddenly smaller. Closer. Her breathing hitched again, and this time she couldn't hide it. Her body started trembling, the aftershock finally crashing through her system. Ethan reacted instantly. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her, tucking it around her shoulders despite her half-hearted protest. I don't need. Yes, you do, he said firmly, and I don't care if you hate it. She went still. He crouched beside the cot, one hand braced against the metal frame, the other hovering uncertain for the first time since she'd known him. I should have stopped you earlier, he said quietly. I chose distance when I should have chosen judgment. Her eyes flicked to his face. You didn't want to cross a line. I crossed it anyway, he replied, just later than I should have. Her breathing slowed, exhaustion dragging her under. Before sleep took her, She felt his hand settle briefly at her wrist. Not controlling. Not protective. Grounding. She didn't pull away. And Ethan stayed there kneeling, watching, guarding until her breathing. Even now, the storm outside rising again, rescue still uncertain, and the space between them finally, dangerously gone. The helicopter didn't sound real at first. It started as a vibration in the floorboards, a distant tremor in the air. Lena thought it was the wind shifting again until Ethan went completely still. Then he looked up. Not hopeful. Alert. There, he said quietly. The sound built fast, rotors chopping through the sky, close enough now that the metal walls of the ridge station began to rattle. Lena's pulse spiked. Is that? Yes. He was already moving. He pulled the door open and stepped into the snow without waiting for another word. Wind roared inside immediately, cold biting at Lena's face as she tried to sit upright. Outside, the helicopter fought the gusts as it descended into the narrow clearing. Snow blasted outward in violent spirals. 2 rescue operators jumped out the moment it steadied. Ethan met them halfway. Lena couldn't hear the first exchange, but she saw the gestures, sharp, efficient, urgent. Then one of the operators pushed past Ethan and came inside. Who's injured? He shouted. Lena lifted her hand slightly. Me. He crouched in front of her, assessing quickly. What happened? Sprained ankle, she replied evenly. You walk on it? She hesitated. Ethan answered for her. Yes. The rescuer glanced between them. In this terrain? She insisted. Ethan added. That one word, insisted, landed harder than it should have. Lena's eyes flicked toward him. He wasn't looking at her. He was watching the door. Watching the weather. Watching everything except her. The rescuer peeled back the brace slightly and swore under his breath. That's not just a sprain. It's blown up pretty good. I can manage, Lena said automatically. No, you can't, the rescuer replied, and you shouldn't have tried. Ethan said nothing. That silence felt louder than criticism. The pilot leaned in through the doorway. We've got 1 slot. Fuel's tight and weather's turning again. Lena's stomach dropped. 1, she repeated. The rescuer nodded. We take the injured first. Before she could process it fully, Ethan spoke. She goes. Immediate. Firm. Final. The rescuer nodded once and moved to help Lena stand. She looked at Ethan. You're not coming? For now, he said calmly. For now, she pressed. Second run when the window opens again. His tone was measured, logical, professional. Like this was a scheduling inconvenience. Like it didn't matter. The wind howled louder outside. The rescuer slipped an arm under her shoulder. Lena winced as her ankle protested. She instinctively reached for balance. And for half a second, she thought Ethan might step in. He didn't. He stepped back instead. Making space. Respecting distance. Respecting boundaries. The door burst open fully as they moved toward the helicopter. Snow lashed her face. The world narrowed to noise and white blur. Just before they lifted her into the cabin, Lena twisted back toward him. You better follow, she shouted over the rotor wash. His gaze locked onto hers. I will, he said. Not I promise. Not I'm coming. Just, I will. It wasn't enough. The door slammed shut. The helicopter lifted violently, tilting against the wind as the ridge dropped away beneath them. Through the small frost-clouded window, Lena saw him. A dark figure in the snow. Still. Watching. Not waving. Not signaling. Just standing there. And then the cloud swallowed him whole. The clinic at the emergency outpost was fluorescent and loud. Too warm, too bright. They cut her boot off completely, confirmed ligament damage, wrapped her ankle tightly, gave her something for pain she didn't remember swallowing. Your partner? The nurse asked casually while adjusting the brace. He's still on the mountain, Lena replied. The nurse paused. Still. Second run, Lena said. Weather window. The nurse's expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough. Mountain conditions are closing again, she said gently. Flights may not resume until morning. Morning. The word cracked something open in Lena's chest. He said he'd come, she murmured. The nurse gave a small, polite smile. I'm sure he will. But that wasn't reassurance. That was sympathy. Back at the ridge station, the weather shifted fast. Ethan watched the sky darken from the doorway. He had calculated the window correctly. But the mountain didn't care about calculations. The radio spat static when he tried again. No confirmation. No update. Just silence. He closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, eyes shut. He replayed the last look she gave him. Not fear. Not gratitude. Hurt. He had done the right thing. He knew he had. So why did it feel like he had abandoned her? Because he hadn't said what mattered. He hadn't said, I'm not leaving you. He hadn't said, this isn't distance. He hadn't said anything at all. He had chosen control over clarity. Again, the wind slammed against the station walls. He pushed off the door and moved back to the radio. This is Cross, he said steadily, requesting status update on extraction flight. Static. Then, faintly, negative clearance. Return delayed. Sit tight. Sit tight. He exhaled slowly. The cabin was empty without her. Not physically empty. Emotionally hollow. He hadn't realized how much space she occupied until it was gone. Not noise. Not conversation. Presence. And now there was nothing but one. At the clinic, Lena stared at her phone. No signal. No message. No confirmation. Her mind replayed the moment he said she goes. Not we go. Not I've got you. Just a decision. A command. Had he chosen safety? Or had he chosen distance again? The doubt was worse than the injury. Hours passed. Night settled. And somewhere between anger and fear, Lena realized something terrifying. If the helicopter didn't go back, if he didn't make it down, the last thing she had said to him was a challenge. And the last thing he had given her was space. The helicopter landed just after dawn. Lena heard it before the staff confirmed it. The sound hit her chest like a second heartbeat, violent and immediate. She was already sitting up in the clinic bed when the nurse stepped in. Second extraction came through, she said. A pause, companion is here. Lena didn't wait for more. She ignored the protest in her ankle and pushed herself upright, gripping the wall for balance. Pain shot through her leg, but she barely registered it. He was here. The hallway outside buzzed with activity, boots, voices, medical staff moving fast. And then she saw him. At the far end of the corridor. Still in snow-soaked gear, face drawn tight with exhaustion, a shallow cut along his brow she hadn't seen before, jacket dusted white. He looked worse. He looked human. He looked relieved. Their eyes met. And something snapped. She didn't wait for him to close the distance. She limped toward him as fast as she could manage. You stayed, she said, breath unsteady. I said I would. That's not what I meant. His jaw tightened. Then what did you mean? You let them take me like I was. She struggled for the word, replaceable. His expression shifted instantly. Replaceable? You didn't fight to come with me. Because you were injured. You didn't argue. Because it wasn't about me. Her voice cracked. Heads turned in the hallway. You didn't say anything, she continued, anger spilling now that fear had somewhere to land. You didn't tell me you'd follow. You didn't tell me you weren't leaving. He stared at her like she'd struck him. I chose your safety, he said tightly. You chose silence. Something dark flared in his eyes. I don't do theatrics, Lena. I didn't want theatrics. She shot back. I wanted. She stopped herself. He stepped closer. You wanted what? The hallway suddenly felt too small, too public, too loud for something that wasn't meant to be said here. I wanted to know I mattered more than procedure, she said finally. He went still. You did, he said quietly. It didn't feel like it. And it didn't feel like you trusted me, he returned, voice lowering. You looked at me like I'd abandoned you. You did, she whispered. That landed. Hard. His restraint cracked. I stood on a mountain in worsening weather, he said, voice rough now, controlled anger slipping through. After carrying you up a ridge on an injury you refused to admit, after choosing you without hesitation, and you think I abandoned you. You chose the practical option, she shot back. You always do. Because that's how people survive. Not everything is survival, she snapped. Sometimes it's just human. The word hung between them. Human. Not strategic. Not controlled. Not measured. His breathing changed. You think I wasn't human about it? He asked quietly. You didn't show it. He stepped closer again. Do you know what it cost not to get on that helicopter? He said. Her anger faltered. I wanted to, he continued. I wanted to break protocol and get on with you. I wanted to say things that would have made you stay looking at me instead of the storm. Her pulse stuttered. But you told me not to act like the hero, he finished. So I didn't. The truth of that hit like cold water. You think this is about being a hero, she whispered. No, he said. It's about control, and I chose to give you yours. She stared at him. And it felt like you walked away, she said. His voice dropped. It felt like you didn't believe I'd come back. Silence. Raw. Unfiltered. For the first time, neither of them had the shield of snow or duty or distance. Just each other. You scare me, she admitted suddenly. His brow furrowed. Why? Because when you decide something, it's final, and I didn't know if I was part of the decision. He exhaled slowly. You were the only part of it. Her throat tightened. The hallway noise seemed to fade. Then why does it always feel like I'm the one chasing? She asked softly. That did it. His composure cracked completely. He stepped into her space, hands bracing against the wall on either side of her, not trapping, not aggressive, just close. You are not chasing me, he said, voice low and intense. You are the only reason I stayed steady up there. Her breath caught. You think I didn't feel it when that helicopter left? He continued. You think I didn't hate watching you disappear into that storm? Then why didn't you say it? Because if I had, he said, jaw tightening, I wouldn't have let you go. The admission hit like impact. Explosive. You don't get to make choices for me, she said, but the anger had softened. And you don't get to decide I don't care because I don't perform it loudly. They were inches apart now. Too close. Too charged. You infuriate me, she breathed. I know. You make everything feel like a test. I'm not testing you. Then what are you doing? He hesitated. That was new. Finally, trying not to cross lines I won't be able to uncross. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure he could hear it. And if I want you to? She asked quietly. The air shifted. That wasn't anger anymore. That was something else. His eyes darkened. You don't say that unless you mean it, he warned. I don't say anything I don't mean. The tension snapped. Not in a kiss. Not yet. In something worse. He stepped back first. And that hurt more than if he hadn't. Your ankle needs rest, he said, voice strained now. We'll talk when you're stable. Don't retreat now, she said. I'm not retreating, he replied. I'm choosing not to ruin this in a hospital hallway. She swallowed. That's the most human thing you've said all week. A faint, exhausted almost smile touched his mouth. Then I'm learning. They stood there a second longer, both shaken, both too aware of what almost happened. The reunion hadn't softened anything. It had exposed everything, and neither of them could pretend the storm was the most dangerous thing they'd survived anymore. The clinic room was too quiet, too still after the sharp edges of the hallway. Lena sat on the edge of the narrow hospital bed, ankle wrapped, pulse still unsettled from the confrontation downstairs. The adrenaline had faded, but something deeper remained, a restless current beneath her skin. The door clicked shut behind Ethan. He didn't speak immediately. He leaned back against it, exhaled once, slow and controlled, as if steadying himself. They were alone. No audience. No excuses. You shouldn't be standing on that ankle, he said finally. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't soft either. It's manageable, she replied. A pause. That's not what I meant. Silence stretch. He pushed off the door and crossed the room, not rushed, not hesitant. Measure. He stopped a few feet from her, close enough to feel, far enough to retreat. You said something downstairs, he began, about wanting to know you mattered more than procedure. She held his gaze. Yes, you did. Her throat tightened. That's not what it felt like, she said. I know, he replied. That startled her. You know? Yes. His jaw flexed slightly. I'm not good at this, he said, the part where I explain instead of act. Then try, she said quietly. He stepped closer. I didn't argue because arguing would have been about me. Getting on that helicopter with you would have been about what I wanted. And what I wanted, he admitted, voice lowering, was not rational. Her pulse skipped. What did you want? She asked. His eyes darkened. To sit next to you, to make sure you were steady, to tell you weren't going through this alone. The room seemed to shrink. Why didn't you? She whispered. Because if I'd said that out loud, he replied, I wouldn't have let you go. The truth of it hit her in the chest. Not dramatic, not performative, just honest. And you thought I didn't matter, he added quietly. She swallowed. I thought you chose control over me. His voice roughened. I chose you. Something in her broke at that. You don't make it easy to believe, she admitted. He stepped closer again. Now there was no space left. You don't make it easy to say, he countered. Her breath hitched. Then say it, she challenged. The words hummed there. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, slowly, gave her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her jaw. Light. Testing. She didn't move. You matter, he said finally. More than control. More than procedure. More than the mountain. Her eyes burned. That's not what scares me, she said softly. What does? That I matter enough to make you reckless. His hand stilled. I'm already reckless, he replied. Ethan. He cut her off by stepping in fully. Not aggressive. Not overwhelming. Just present. His other hand came to her waist, steadying her because of the ankle, but it didn't feel clinical this time. It felt intentional. You want honesty? He asked quietly. Yes. I have been holding back every instinct I have around you. Her breath caught. Because, she pressed. Because once I stop, he said, eyes locked on hers, I won't start again. The air between them felt charged, fragile. She searched his face. Then don't stop, she whispered. That was it. The last restraint snapped. He kissed her. Not tentative. Not polite. It wasn't a crash, it was a pull. Deep and deliberate, like something long denied finally being allowed air. His hand slid from her jaw into her hair, fingers tightening just slightly. Her hands found his jacket instinctively, gripping as if grounding herself. There was no hesitation now. No second guessing. Weeks of tension, fear, pride, distance, all collapsing into heat. She felt him shift closer, careful of her ankle, even now, and that awareness made her chest ache. You're shaking, he murmured against her mouth. So are you, she replied. He kissed her again, slower this time, less urgency, more weight. His forehead rested against hers when they broke apart, breathing uneven. This changes things, he said quietly. Yes. You don't get to pretend this didn't happen if it scares you tomorrow. I won't, she said. And if I lose control again? She leaned forward and kissed him first this time. Not fierce, certain. When she pulled back, she held his gaze. Then we'll both deal with it, she said. For the first time since the mountain, since the cabin, since the storm. He smiled. Not guarded. Not restrained. Real. He brushed his thumb along her cheek again. No more distance, he said. No more silence, she answered. And this time, when he kissed her again, it wasn't explosive. It was steady, like something chosen. Lena woke slowly. Not to noise. Not to pain. To warmth. For a brief, suspended second, she didn't remember where she was, only that something solid and steady surrounded her. Then memory returned in fragments. The argument. The confession. The kiss. Her eyes opened. The clinic room was dim, early light slipping through half-closed blinds. The storm had passed. Everything outside looked deceptively calm. And Ethan was still there. Not across the room. Not in a chair. Beside the bed. He hadn't climbed in fully. The cot was too narrow for that, but he pulled a chair close enough that his forearm rested along the mattress, his head tipped slightly toward her as if he'd fallen asleep mid-watch. He hadn't left. Her chest tightened at the sight. Careful not to disturb her ankle, she shifted slightly. His eyes opened immediately. Blurred in an instant. Then softened when he saw her awake. Morning, he said quietly. His voice was rough, sleep-worn. You stayed, she murmured. He glanced at his arm like he'd forgotten it was there. You said no more distance. Something warm flickered in her chest. I didn't think you meant literal. I meant all of it, he replied. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't heavy. It was aware. Different. The tension wasn't sharp anymore. It was steady, under the surface. How's the ankle? He asked. Still attached. That wasn't the question. She studied him. You don't have to revert back to practical this morning. His gaze held hers. I'm not reverting, he said. I just don't want you in pain. The sincerity in that, quiet, unforced, made her swallow. I am, she admitted. A little. His jaw tightened. I shouldn't have let you push that far. There it is, she said softly. You always take it on. It was my call. It was ours, she corrected. He didn't argue. Instead, his fingers brushed lightly against the back of her hand, not claiming, not urgent. Grounded. Last night had been heat and collision. This was something else. You're quiet, he observed. I'm thinking. Dangerous. She almost smiled. I'm thinking about what happens when we leave here, she said. The words shifted the air slightly. His thumb stilled against her skin. Go on. The storm made everything simple, she continued. Survive. Decide. Feel. Now there are rules again. People. Expectations. And you think that changes what happened. It wasn't a question. She met his gaze. I don't want it to, she said honestly. He held her eyes for a long moment. It doesn't, he replied. How can you be so sure? Because I don't say things lightly, he said, and I don't touch things I don't intend to keep. Her breath caught. That's very confident. It's not confidence, he said quietly. It's clarity. That hit deeper than anything dramatic could have. She studied his face in the morning light. He looked tired. Worn. Human. Not controlled. Not distant. Real. You were scared, she said suddenly. He didn't pretend not to understand. Yes. For me. Yes. She searched for hesitation. There wasn't any. And that didn't make you feel weak? She asked. It made me feel reckless, he corrected. And that scares you? Yes. Her fingers curled around his. That doesn't scare me. His gaze sharpened slightly. It should. Why? Because when I care about something, he said carefully, I don't step back. Her pulse quickened. Are you stepping forward right now? She asked. Instead of answering, he stood. Slowly, he moved around the bed so he was directly in front of her. Close. Not touching yet. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. Her heart hammered. I'm not going to. His hand slid gently to her jaw again, familiar now, intentional. This isn't the storm, he said. This isn't adrenaline. I know. If this moves forward, it doesn't go backward. I know. His thumb traced lightly along her cheekbone. You're sure? She looked at him, not defiant, not guarded. Certain. Yes. That was all he needed. He leaned down and kissed her again. Not hungry this time. Not explosive. Slow. Measure. Like something deliberate being written instead of stolen. Her hands came up instinctively, resting against his chest. She felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat under her palms. When he pulled back, it wasn't far. Good, he said softly. For what? For once, we're choosing at the same time. The morning light brightened across the room. Outside, the world looked calm. Inside, something had shifted permanently. No storm. No crisis. Just two people standing in the quiet aftermath, no longer pretending they didn't want the same thing. And for the first time, neither of them reached for distance. They were discharged by noon. The sky was clear, the mountain almost peaceful, insultingly so. A car from town waited to take them back to the cabin to collect what was left behind. The drive was quiet, but not tense. Lena sat in the passenger seat, ankle braced, watching the road climb back toward the place that had changed everything. Ethan's hand rested loosely near the gear shift, not touching her, but close enough that the distance felt intentional, not cautious. You don't have to come back up, he said at one point. Yes, I do. Why? Because I'm not letting that place be the last word. He glanced at her briefly. There. When they reached the cabin, it looked smaller, less ominous in daylight. But something was different. The front door was slightly ajar. Ethan saw it immediately. His posture shifted. Not dramatic, but alert. Stay in the car, he said. She didn't argue this time. But she didn't look away either. He approached slowly, hand brushing inside his jacket out of habit. The door creaked when he pushed it fully open. Inside, the cabin looked mostly untouched. Except, the desk drawer had been empty. The back window latch was broken. And the small lockbox near the fireplace was gone. He scanned quickly. No signs of current presence. Just evidence. Someone had returned. Or never fully left. He stepped back outside. Someone came back, he said calmly. Lena felt the weight of that settle. For what? She asked. That's what I need to find out. He held her gaze for a long moment. Then, this wasn't random. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air. This was about you, he added. Her breath caught. About me how? He didn't soften it. Your father's company, the acquisition, the timing, the isolation. It clicked slowly. This wasn't a storm accident, she said quietly. No, it had been engineered opportunity. And suddenly the cabin felt less like survival and more like strategy. Her jaw tightened. So what now? Ethan didn't hesitate. Now we stop reacting. The tone in his voice had changed. Not cold. Focus. We go back, he continued. We loop in my team. We trace who accessed the property logs. We find who knew you'd be there. And when you do? She asked. His eyes held hers. Then it ends. There was no bravado in it. Just certainty. She watched him carefully. You don't have to do that alone. I won't, he said. And this time, it wasn't about physical danger. It was about something bigger. He walked back toward the car. Pause. Then opened her door himself. Not because she needed help, but because he chose to. She looked up at him. Are you stepping forward? She asked softly. He met her gaze without hesitation. I already did. Later, back in the city, the shift was immediate. Phones rang. Emails moved. Security footage was reviewed. Names surfaced. Patterns connected. Within 48 hours, they had an answer. A rival executive tied to the acquisition. A hired intermediary. A staged vulnerability. The mountain had been meant to isolate her, to pressure, to intimidate. Instead, it had done the opposite. It had clarified. When Ethan walked into her office that evening with the final report, she saw something different in him. Not tension, not restraint, decision. It's handled, he said. Handled how? Legally, permanently. She searched his face. And us? She asked. That question carried more weight than the investigation ever had. He crossed the room slowly. No hesitation now. No more storms, he said. No more distance. No more pretending we're circling something. He stopped in front of her desk. I don't do halfway. She stood. And I don't want halfway. There it was. Not adrenaline. Not survival. Choice. Deliberate. He reached for her, not urgently, not possessively. Just sure. Then we don't keep this quiet, he said. Her pulse jumped slightly. Public? She asked. Yes. Not because of optics. Not because of power. Because he wasn't hiding it. She studied him for one last second. The man who chose control. The man who stood alone on a mountain. The man who finally stopped stepping back. Okay, she said. And when he kissed her this time, it wasn't about heat. It was about alignment. The city felt louder than the mountain ever had. Phones rang, elevators chimed, conversations echoed down polished corridors. But none of it unsettled Lena. Because this time, she wasn't reacting. She was choosing. The report sat closed on her desk, names, transactions, proof, the engineered isolation, the calculated pressure, the quiet attempt to make her feel small, vulnerable, alone. They had underestimated her. And they had underestimated him. Ethan stood across from her desk, jacket folded over one arm, expression calm but unyielding. The situation was resolved. Lawyers were involved. Consequences were in motion. No drama. No spectacle. Just precision. It's finished, he said. She held his gaze. And us? She asked. He didn't hesitate. I don't compartmentalize, he replied. If I'm in fully. No theatrics. No grand declaration. Just clarity. Outside the glass walls of her office, people moved as usual. Assistants passed. Colleagues worked. The world continued, unaware of the storm that had reshaped something fundamental. You're sure? She asked softly. He stepped closer. The same man who had stood still on a mountain ridge. The same man who had chosen silence to protect her. The same man who had finally stopped retreating. I chose you in the storm, he said quietly. I'm choosing you now when it's calm. That was the difference. Not adrenaline. Not crisis. Not proximity. Choice. She walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of him. No more distance? She asked. No more distance. No more deciding alone? Not unless you ask me to. And no more silence? His jaw softened. No more silence. It wasn't a negotiation. It was alignment. She nodded once. Then we don't hide, she said. He didn't smile, but something steadier settled in his expression. Good. The office door was open. Anyone passing could see them. Anyone could speculate. For the first time, neither of them cared. He reached for her, not urgently, not possessively, deliberately. His hand rested at her waist, her slit at his chest. No hesitation. No storm. Just certainty. When he kissed her, it wasn't explosive. It wasn't desperate. It was grounding, like something finally standing still. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, the last barrier dissolved. The mountain had tested them. The silence had almost broken them. The misunderstanding had nearly driven them apart. But this was chosen. Not because they were trapped. Not because they were afraid. Not because one needed saving. Because they both stepped forward at the same time. And neither stepped back.